has begun to withdraw forces from the city of Jenin in the West Bank after carrying out one of the biggest military operations there in years, delivering what they say are anti-terrorism measures inside the refugee camp. Thousands of people have left the camp since the operation began. Let's remind you of some of the history. Israeli forces captured and occupied the West Bank in 1967 from Jordan. The West Bank includes the cities that you can see here, including Jenin in the north, where thousands of Palestinians live in a refugee camp which was set up after the first Israeli-Palestinian conflict in 1948. In this latest violence, at least 11 Palestinians have been killed and more than 50 injured. And today, 7 people were also injured in an attack in Tel Aviv by a Palestinian from the West Bank. Our international editor, Jeremy Bowen, is in Jenin for us tonight. And Jeremy, a day of violence, where do things stand tonight?
Well, first of all, I can tell you what a difference a couple of hours makes, because when I was standing up here, just as it was getting dark, a full-on gun battle started in the street below between Israeli troops and local young men, some of whom had weapons. And all of that came after such a hard time that everybody's been having here. And since then, the street has refilled with pedestrians, with cars coming back in, even though it's now gone midnight here. And all that comes after a very difficult 48 hours.
The Israeli military released these pictures. Their message: Israel's enemies can expect no mercy. Families caught in the crossfire managed to get out overnight. The impact on civilians is alarming UN agencies, what they call the loss of life and the scale and severity of injuries. This morning, the Israelis said they were working systematically to locate and destroy weapons. Palestinians had tried to make this part of Jenin a no-go area for Israelis. On the edges of the refugee camp, their fury and frustration overflowed. More families came out of the combat zone. The UN says Israeli strikes cut much of the camp's power and water. Here they are, crude devices. Israel's firepower is very different. See, there's also every sign they want to declare victory and get out. But victories for the Israelis here are always temporary, because these people, the Palestinians, feel that just their presence here is victory in itself. And violence, more violence, is guaranteed in the absence of a political process, in the absence of any hope for peace. At the same time, a Palestinian rammed his car into civilians in Tel Aviv on Israel's coast. He was shot dead by a passerby.
The entrance to the refugee camp, but we've been told this is pretty much as close as we can get safely. You can see an Israeli military bulldozer over there. We've been hearing drones flying more or less continuously and explosions and gunfire throughout the morning.
At a hospital morgue down the road, the grief is overwhelming. A family struggle to process the death of their 14-year-old son. Amongst the injured patients being treated, those with links to militants and those with none. Mohammed Abu Saraya is a rescue worker.
I was standing with volunteer paramedics and we were discussing what to do if there's an airstrike, like how to evacuate people. There were no militants around us. We felt safe because we were wearing our uniform from the Civil Defence Force. It even has reflectors on it. But 2 young men next to me were martyred. They were both civilians.
Israeli officials say they're targeting militants based inside the camp who have grown increasingly influential. they struck an Israeli vehicle with a powerful roadside bomb during a previous raid 2 weeks ago, then made a failed attempt to launch homemade rockets at a settlement. We met one young fighter as he struggled to make contact with others still battling against Israeli forces. He agreed to talk on the condition of anonymity.
The Israeli army attacked us with a lot of troops, but we knew they planned to invade Jenin. They don't go into any other city in the West Bank with so many troops, only Jenin, because Jenin has hurt the Israeli occupation. Our fighters humiliate them.
But when Palestinian fighters from places like Jenin go and carry out attacks on Israeli civilians, there's going to be a response from the Israeli side too, isn't there? And that's what we're seeing now.
Of course we will carry out our operations. We will riot, because when you come to my city, kill me and kill my children and women, I will kill the Jews, the settlers, the civilians, the soldiers.
And in the Israeli city of Tel Aviv today, fear and chaos as a Palestinian man rammed pedestrians with a car and stabbed others before being shot dead.
Whoever thinks that such an attack will deter us from continuing our fight against terrorism is mistaken. We will continue as long as necessary to uproot it. We will not allow Jenin to go back to being a city of refuge for terrorists.
But back in Jenin, the military operation is just further fueling resentment. This is one of the largest